it's super common these days to have clearly defined company values that you publicize on your website, for instance. But if I reflect on what my ancestors, my entrepreneur ancestors, like my father, my grandfather, and maybe grandparents were doing, first of all, they did not have a website because it was before internet. In looking through their archives and really, looking at the history of how they were doing business back in Europe, they doesn't seem like they had anywhere big statement, lofty promises about their values. Instead, what I know and what I learned from generations of entrepreneurs is that values were passed on through action, through walking the talk. And that is really, in my opinion, the best way to go about values. I'm not saying that not having clearly defined values and publicized values is okay. I think you should have both, but I think a lot of people are confused about how to go about this. So I'd like to try in this video to give a little bit of clarity with the difference between stated values and lived and experienced values, and how to merge both and how to really create a business that feels authentic because it aligns with your values. So that you probably know this very famous quote from, I can't remember who. Let me try to pull it here, from Goethe. It's a German writer. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. And I think that that quote refers to the fact that knowing and saying and and willing is good, but when we act, this is when we really demonstrate who we are as a person. And everyone has values, no matter what, good or bad values, positive, noble, or not so noble values. There's all a bunch of them. But if I think about the statement, what this refers to is that the best place, the best domain area where we are to meet really who we are and discover our values is in action, is in doing things. So if you are creating for people, if you are advising, if you're consulting, if you're coaching, if you are marketing, whatever you might be doing, your values are best found there. They are how you execute on your craft. Values are how we decide. Values are an expression of our choices. If you value money in a certain way, you will make very different decisions than if you do it another way. If you value freedom, you will make very different decisions than if you value freedom less than others. I value freedom so much that for me, I stayed employed and I worked with employers very successfully, but it wasn't my sweet spot. And so I went on and started 4 ventures as of today. Maybe I'll keep going, but for me, independence and freedom of actions, freedom of creation, freedom of going left or right, anywhere with my business is so important that I was always, most of my career was as an entrepreneur, in fact. So that's just an example there. Really, values are found in how we take decisions, how we make decisions, and how we take actions. Now, another quote that I would like to share with you is a quote from Carl Jung that says, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." And this again illustrates the point about authenticity and how we are to exist through our values if we want to be authentic, and you hear it all the time. These companies, have all those lofty statements, but really they don't walk the talk. I think that if you want to build a business that feels authentic, that feels sustainable, I would focus there is how you walking your talk. Now, that assumes that you've clearly identified what the talk is, what the communication. So that's where we get into what I call stated values. And most people, are confused between lived or experienced values, which is, how do we sense them? How do we see them? And how we state them? How we state them. So there's a big hype around stated values. Like every possible, I think, business advisor will tell, what are your values? Like, should we write them down? Should we define them? And that's all good thing, right? But here in this video, I'm making the case for the order in which you should go about those two kinds of values and the connection, the relationship with those two kinds of values. So I firmly believe that starting by doing things, by doing your work and focusing on doing the work the way you feel like is appropriate, that feels that brings the most value, that is your perspective, right? Your perspective is a chance to agree or disagree with your colleagues, also known as competitors sometimes. And it helps people place you in their mental map. That is called positioning. They position you in their internal, I would say, warehouse of possible providers. It helps you catalog you, and that's what your values help you do, right? So it's important maybe to, as you go through your entrepreneurial journey, to document and to capture what you're working on, reflecting on projects, having conversations with people about your experiences, and start to organize what feels that is most important than other things. So as you do this, and that's probably a process that will take a while, for me, it took many, many years, you will start noticing that there are things that are that prevail others that go in a specific orders. For instance, for me, when I onboard a new client, I apply my value system, my value set, to making the decision if I'm going to work with a client or not. And for me, one of my key values is really learning. All throughout my life, I made career choices, friendship choices, pretty much everything through what I would perceive as, being an opportunity to learn. For me, learning is the number one thing, this number one source of personal and material wealth, even. Learning is one of the strongest values here at MetaHelm. So with that in mind, when I onboard or when I have a sales conversation with a client, I reflect on this. Am I going to learn anything? Am I going to really empower this client to learn something? Is this client interested in learning from me, from MetaHelm, or are they just trying to find an excuse to work with me, or I don't know what, but that's really a criteria for me. So I'm able to do that. I'm able to have this conscious and authentic, intentional discussion with myself and with the people I work because I did the work of documented what I was seeing in all the actions that I took. So really start with action and then comes reflection and an identification of what your values are. You could do both at the same time. But I really, and I was part of those retreats where we would, go in a big room with the team and do a retreat. And for 2, 3 days, we would try to define the company vision and mission and values. Maybe we're not doing these exercises right, but it always felt too theoretical, too dry, too much in a vacuum. I wish we had done this differently, but really the best way to find your values and really live your values is just to do the work that you're you're set to do, that you decided, to do, and do it the best as you can. Just do your work, and your values will just show through. They will be the expression. They will be the expression of what you believe, how you work, how you make those choices, how you make your decisions, how you design things, how much time you dedicate to different things. Just show people what you value and what comes first, second, third, fourth, and so on. All right. So I hope this is good food for thought for you on how to approach the topic of values. And if you're a consultant, because I've noticed many consultants or coaches or marketers, designers, etc., really don't always use the power of values. But I think this video is maybe a place for you to start. I hope it is helpful. And as always, I welcome your comments and questions. Thank you so much.